2, 1. Good morning. Welcome to the March 18th, 2024 Operations and Safety Committee's meeting. I am Melanie Williams, Chair of Operations and Safety Committee. Please silence all electronic devices for the duration of the meeting. The meeting format is hybrid. Quorum is physically present at the HART Administrative Office, 1201 East 7th Avenue, Florida Conference Room, and the rest of the board members are participating via communication media technology. Please look at the screens of your devices. An image of the flag is displayed. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're moving on to public comment. There was no one scheduled to speak. Is there anyone present for public comment this morning? Thank you. This concludes the public input section of the meeting. In the packet are the minutes from the February 19th, 2024 Operations and Safety Committee meeting. Is there a motion to approve the meetings?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion passes. Thank you. We're moving on to presentations at this time. Operations and Maintenance Monthly Metrics Report, February 2024. The first presentation of the Operations and Maintenance Monthly Metrics Report for February 2024 from Mr. Bobby Edwards, Director of Transportation, Mr. Nicholas Goulburn, Director of Fleet Maintenance, Dale Smith, Director of Facilities, and Mr. Richard Campbell, Chief Safety Officer. Staff will give the presentation and transition between speakers. I'll hand it over to you, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, sorry. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, board members, and good morning, Mr. Drainville. I'll start off the presentation on the transportation February metrics. So looking at February's ridership for fixed route, we were at 943,000 riders for fixed route, 116,000 for streetcar, 15,000 for paratransit, totaling 1,075,471. Looking at the trend from January to February, we were about a 4.2% decrease in ridership. On a 6-month trend, overall ridership, we were trending down about 2% of ridership. The next slide shows the 6-month trend of just fixed bus ridership, with February showing 943,000. Here we look at the average weekday daily ridership, showing average ridership by route, showing the Route 1 through the Route 45 carries most of our ridership, even including maybe the Route 16 in there, all the way down to the Route 25 with the least amount of ridership. Here we look at our on-time performance by route. With our local routes for the month of February sitting at about 69% on-time performance. That's about 2% down from January. And some of those contributing factors, we're looking at detours, increase in student ridership, some of the vacationers that visits Florida from February vacation to the March spring break. Increases in ridership as well are some of the factors. And our scheduling team is constantly looking at ways that we can improve it operationally and overall schedule related for OTP. Here we look at our top 5 routes and the representation of their ridership. the Route 1, the Route 6, 34, 412, all of our highest ridership routes. And the Route 1 sitting at 66%, Route 6 sitting at 70%, Route 34 at 77, Route 400 at 66, and Route 12 at 75, and which that will make a lot of sense where they're carrying most of all of our riders with stopping and picking up folks at bus stops with wheelchairs and things like that. The on-time performance is not as great as some of the other routes. And we'll continue to work on that as we go from markup to markup to make adjustments where we can find and try to increase that on-time performance to that standard of 77%. Looking at our on-time performance for 6-month trend system-wide, we're at 99% for streetcar, at 95.90% for paratransit, and 68.8% for bus. And as you see, there was a decline from January to February. Then for my last slide, we'll look at how many trips that we're running versus how many trips we're completing. So we're completing our trips at a 99.33% rate, which means that we've only missed 0.67% of all the trips that we were scheduled to run. So we'll still find ways to even try to complete more trips, but we're running our scheduled trips as planned. So that concludes my part of the presentation. I'll turn it over to Nick if anyone has any questions.
Director Knight, you recognized.
Yeah, thank you for the information. I was curious, to say like the first 10 buses and stops, pickup, the amount of stops and pickups for those 10, is it the same amount of from 1 through 10, the top 10? I'm looking at them numbers, there's some big numbers.
Let me get back to that slide. I think you're talking about the routes by ridership,
Yes,
right here.
right. You know, when they pick up from 1 through 10, is it the same amount of stops?
Yeah, I'll pass that to Justin.
No, they vary significantly. So, for example, the Route 400 probably has the fewest number of stops. I think it's about 30 in each direction, whereas Route 1 has about, I think, 53 stops in one direction. So that's part of the reason occasionally you'll see us implementing stop consolidations in a markup. We get a lot of different comments about that. The operators will oftentimes say that we've got them too close together, so we want to clean them up. And then we go through with it from a safety perspective and say, is there a safe crossing at that location for customers that are going to need to cross the street on one direction of their trip? And that influences that. But the answer is no. They vary greatly. Route 6 probably has the most because it's one of the longest routes in our whole system. But it also has a transfer center in the middle of the route, so that kind of affects it a little differently how we schedule, and try not to go into too much detail here.
Yeah, and the reason I asked, even like that one, and the amount of people, what could be done, you know, some places you go, you know, they got extended or whatever, but more to pick up more people, because that's a lot of people, even 50 stops. But apparently it's pretty busy, you know, to pick up everybody, and somebody may not make it, some people.
Got it.
Thank you. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question on on-time performance. Do we have regular communication with the local jurisdictions when they're going to start road projects so that we are, because I know Tampa's going to be just going to spend a buku bucks here soon on a whole lot of roads, and we
Yes.
need to know ahead of time. So we do have good communication
Yes, sir.
with them on that prior to, going up streets tore up, type thing. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep.
I can't see whether someone online has a question. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning, Nicholas Goldburn. Good morning, Chair, committee members, Mr. Drainville. I'm going to deviate a bit from our regular scheduled program. Last month, we onboarded a new analyst. And in onboarding the analyst, she asked me a good question. And in talking about preventive maintenance compliance during safety inspection, she asked, why do we always show this information? And you guys are doing a very good job here. And it's easy to forget where you came from. And that question brought me back to when we started the program of tracking. In 2019, our on-time compliance for preventive maintenance for fixed route was in the 60 percentile. I believe it was 67%. For vans, it was at 9%. Today, both programs are tracking close to 99% on-time compliance. And over the years, we've kind of gotten away from looking back to see how much effort the staff has put in to keep these inspections on time and keep the public safe. So her question prompted me to reminisce on those days. Now back to regular program. So FDA and FDOT mandates that we maintain 80% on-time compliance. For February, we did 88 inspections, of which 4 were late and 84 were on time. Certain operational challenges drove the decision to hold assets out of service, to keep assets in service to provide service for the public. And that's why we had a slight decline. So, excuse me, I mentioned that there were a decision made to put assets in service and maintain service. If you look at the fixed route fleet availability, our goal is to provide 80% of the fleet to have it ready for service during the weekdays. Starting the month from the 1st all the way through the 14th, you can see that we're hovering around that 80% mark. So we're almost beating our goal. Some days we're high, some days we're low. After the 14th, there's a consistent decline in our availability, and that is due to a challenge that we faced, which I'm going to go into further details in a few later slides. Okay. Our maintenance between failures, system-wide reliability. So our goal is to drive 15,000 miles between major mechanical failures. For November, after we implemented 14 new buses in service, you can see that we've started to make upward progress. 13,000 miles, 13,400, 14,157 miles. Then in February, we dropped down to 10,087 miles. That's a huge decrease. So it corresponded with a failure that we started to notice during the fleet. We have a monthly maintenance committee where we discuss challenges facing the fleet. It's comprised of supervisors, lead technicians, managers, and parts personnel. One of the issues that was brought up in the February maintenance committee was spark plugs. They told me that they're seeing a lot of misfires in the fleet. So we started to look deeper into the issue, trying to figure out what's going on. Initially, we thought we had a packaging issue where the spark plugs, the electrodes were, the packaging was not long enough, causing electrodes to be damaged. That was not the case. What we found was that we started receiving somehow, inadvertently, counterfeit spark plugs. And the reason why I decided to bring this to the committee's attention, this is not the first time we've dealt with an issue of counterfeit parts in the last year. Early in the year, we had an issue with spark plugs again with AC Delco, which is a GM subsidiary. Cummins, the makers of our CNG engines, requires us to do a preventive maintenance replacement schedule of 18,000 miles, meaning every 18,000 miles, we bring these buses in, we replace all 6 spark plugs. That typically takes about 3.5 hours to do. In February, we were replacing spark plugs on the same vehicle sometimes 3 days in a row. It was very challenging to have assets ready for pullout at the same time, solving the issue of having over 200 spark plugs in our fleet that had to come out. What's really challenging for us is the sophistication in identifying these counterfeits. And in looking at these photos, you can see where it's a little challenging. We're looking for, on the first two on the left, whether the tip is pointed or not. Little details. On the Brandon, we're looking for one that says Denso. If it says Denso, that's an official spark plug from Cummins. And if it says Japan, that's a counterfeit. The packaging, they're almost identical. I had a vendor in my office, and I hold both boxes. I'm gonna ask him, tell me which one's fake. And he chose the original as being the fake one. So, and to not go over, I will move on to the next slide. And that's one of the big challenges we face. So, how do we address these issues for reliability? Our department mantra is to provide clean, safe, and reliable public transportation. And Mr. Drenville in the finance meeting alluded to sole source that we did for Pretec. Pretec provides predictive maintenance solution for vehicles using artificial intelligence and machine learning systems to forecast mechanical failures before they happen. That sounds good. But what's unique about Pretec is how it does it and how it makes our operation more efficient. Off to the right, if you look in that box, that's a repair plan generated from Pretec. And what's unique about the system, it doesn't tell us that something's just going to break. We know there's going to be a failure. We know the bus is going through a fault code. What's great about it, it tells you, in this case, engine coolant temp drops when the engine is stationary, indicating a stuck open thermostat. Recommended pressure testing the coolant system to inspect for leaks, repair if necessary, and replace the thermostat. These emails generate and go straight to the technicians. The supervisors also get an email. So what's great about it, before that unit fails in service and we have to send a tow truck, and that's a $400 bill, we can bring these buses into the shop prior to the failure occurring and address the issue and put it back in service without affecting reliability and OTP. And with that, I will get off my soapbox. Do you have any questions?
I have a question. On page 13, you mentioned counterfeit and counterfeit parts. Is there a process that you're taking to mitigate counterfeit parts? Is that what you were referring to?
Yes, we have taken several steps. So we're sourcing critical components directly from the OEMs. So as good stewards of taxpayers' dollars, we typically use a web quote where we buy parts from the lowest bidder. But we're finding that to be extremely challenging for some components because the failure cost, just in this instance, this failure cost is well over 6 figures. So to prevent these instances from occurring in the future, we're sourcing directly from the dealer, and we're in conversations with Cummins to get access, dealer-level access to their inventory supply. So we'll be able to place orders directly through Cummins, and they'll ship next day air to us.
Okay. So you're assuring that you're not getting sub parts from Cummins who they, I guess, would utilize to provide their parts?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, again, thanks for the presentation. I think it's great, because from the industry that I came from, the power plant and a mechanical journeyman and everything, and also substation, we had problems like that. But the bus drivers, maintenance, and everybody working together to find these problems and then, and address, that's big there. Hats off to everybody that's part of it, because to hear these and find things like that, and like you said, when they go back for maintenance or whatever like that, and not only taxpayer but availability, it can play a big role. And just to find these things like that, that's great. Some good information.
I totally agree, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your presentation. I have a question regarding the spark plugs.
Yes.
Okay, you're basically have been getting the spark plugs as aftermarket products from a substandard vendor?
No, we called for OEM only, and the vendor is actually a reputable vendor.
Right.
So they were even unaware that they had counterfeits. And
Okay.
in our correspondence back and forth with Cummins, we started to identify anomalies in the packaging and presentation of the plugs after we sent them pictures.
Is the vendor making good on the counterfeit plugs?
Don't have the details yet as far as how that's going to be addressed. Right now, the priority is to get the counterfeit out off the buses in the fleet.
Understood.
And I will discuss.
So, but, I mean, there is a venue for getting some remit back from the source of the plugs, right?
We did send back all the ones we had in inventory. The
Right.
challenge is the ones that we already replaced, removed because of failures. And we would need to make sure that we have the proper documentation to prove the claim that this plug caused this amount of loss in this vehicle. So we have to look at the documentation we have at hand, because it's not as granular as down to which plug went into which vehicle. They're not serialized. So it makes it a little challenging. But we will look
Well,
into it.
but
and
when
get
you
back to
pull the substandard plug out because it's failed on you,
Yes.
you're not just throwing them away, you're saving them and you're showing them this is why this plug failed and basically you owe us.
We're doing that for some cases, but not all the technicians, because this issue
Okay.
was ongoing before we even realized what's happening. So
Understood.
it only just came up
Okay.
recently.
But if
But
it's
we are doing that.
if it's a longstanding vendor, they should be willing to make it good to you.
Yes.
Okay,
I agree.
thank you.
Any more questions?
I think the other, I know you guys are subject matter experts, but this is is impacting your ability to get to customers on time. So I was going to ask the question regarding the impact of what caused your ability to be on time. And so this issue is far-reaching beyond just the mechanical aspects, but being able to get the buses on, ready and available to reach your customers. And it impacted your on-time arrivals. And so I think that, for records and so forth, you guys know how to maintain that impact and what it cost us across the board. Things happen, I understand that, but people need to know how the customer suffered as a result of someone else's, I would say, quality standard or lack of quality. So thank you very much for bringing that forward. That was a good find. And again, I appreciate you sharing and exposing that and ultimately taking action. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair, committee members, Mr. Drayville, Dale Smith, Director of Facilities. I want to share some information on the Facilities Department through the month of February with you guys. So we'll start out with route maintenance. Route maintenance has been incredibly busy out there. We have reduced all of our complaints that have been coming in from the public. They've been doing an outstanding job maintaining the preventive maintenance job on the shelters throughout the county and the demand work orders. The demand work orders have really increased. The PM work is going along steady. We're keeping the shelters in really good, clean condition, and I'm very happy with our results there. Facility maintenance this month, we completed 47 preventive maintenance work orders and 72 demand requests. We've also done some fairly large projects. I'll talk about those in a minute with some redoing of shop supervisors' offices and painting and doing some fairly larger scale projects. We kind of focused on safety this month, and I know that we installed 3 new solar light poles throughout the 21st Avenue area. This was to increase lighting levels in areas where we didn't have any electrical power. There were some dark curves that we were really dealing with at night, and we started installing these poles ourselves and putting up solar-powered lighting to kind of brighten up the areas as the buses were around the lot. We also installed one at Shelter, Boy Scout Road, and Jim Walters Boulevard. That also helped with a shelter that was kind of out in the dark. We were able to light up that area and make that area nice and bright. We removed and disposed of 2 shelters that were unserviceable. The shelters were along 30th Street in Idlewild, Columbus Boulevard, and Florida Avenue. We will be installing new shelters as soon as possible in those areas. And we added a bus lane at the intersection of Whiting and Franklin Street. We were having some issues with vehicles parking and not allowing our buses to get up to the curbside to get people. So we were actually able to work with the city and move our actual bus lane up, getting it painted on the street. And now we've not had any parking issues, and our buses are able to get up to the curbside and pick up anyone that needs to be picked up off the curb. From a facility maintenance standpoint, we completed the installation and painting of several speed bumps. A lot of the speed bumps around the 21st Avenue site were becoming a little darker, not as visible, so we really refreshened everything up out there on 21st Avenue, made everything nice and bright. With the additional lighting and the bright speed bumps, we've added an element of safety that we're pretty proud of. We retrofit some lighting in some of the shop floor areas. The mechanics at night, we're having a little trouble seeing, and we went ahead and took out all the bulbs throughout the entire shop floor and put in brand-new high-visibility bulbs. Really increased the candle foot power throughout the shop, and everybody's pretty pleased with how that project worked out. And the last project is the refresh of the shop supervisor's office in there. We've redone flooring, painted. We really stepped up and did a lot of great work in the shop supervisor's office. And now we're focusing actually on the shop floor. We know we're going to be in that building for a few minutes, so we're really trying to make the work area as nice as possible and make people proud to be in that building. Does anybody have any questions for me?
No questions, no questions. Just proud of that you guys continue to find ways to improve working conditions in light of the funds that are available. So just thank you all for continuing to improve the working space for your employees.
I noticed from just driving around that the bus stops I've seen look like they're in good condition and well maintained. So yes, I thank you for that as well.
Good morning, Madam Chair, committee members, Mr. Drainville. My name is Richard Campbell. I'm the Chief Safety Officer, and I'll be reporting the monthly metrics, safety metrics for February. All right, so for the fixed route or bus, we had 4 injuries reported, 1 safety event, and unfortunately, I have to report we had 2 assaults for the month of February. The injuries we have according to the PTASP, so these are NTD reports, the National Transit Safety, the database that we're supposed to report to the FTA. And we have a self-imposed 1.0 margin, that is our self-imposed. And as you can see, for the month of February, we're at 0.78. So we're staying steadily under that threshold of what our criteria is per 100,000 revenue miles. The same with the fixed route for the safety. We had a sharp decrease of 0.20 for the month of February, so I'm pretty ecstatic about that, being that we were up a little bit in January. So we've had a sharp decrease in those reported safety events. For paratransit, we have nothing to report, which is a good thing. And for the streetcar, we had 1 safety event, 2 injuries, and 0 assaults. And then finally, Ms. Williams, as you had requested some time ago, the preventables, non-preventables, we had 2 preventable incidental accidents, 5 preventable accidents, 18 non-preventable accidents, and we have 2 pending still, the results of the investigation. Any questions?
The safety of what, can you tell us about the safety of the incidents that took place?
Those two operators, they're fine. They were, I want to say a little bit more minor in nature, but unfortunately, one operator was bit by a customer, and another operator was hit in the abdomen by a customer. So unfortunately, this is a reality that we're dealing with in this industry, that, the public has gotten a little bit more aggressive. So we are taking steps to prevent this as much as possible, but these things do happen, unfortunately.
And they were able to go beyond the clear, the clear area?
So these two situations did not happen while the operator was driving the bus. So they were outside of their compartment. So obviously, the safety shield we have is for the protection of the operator while the vehicle's in motion, but the operator does have to, vacate that area to take a break, go to the restroom, whatever so there are interactions with customers at platforms and stuff like that, and so sometimes, this is a situation in these two cases.
Unfortunate. And then on the accidents, is everyone safe from an accident standpoint, whether they are preventable or non-preventable? Is there?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So a lot of the and I don't have it right in front of me, but the majority of these could be, a mirror strike. So if a bus is at a stop and, they touch a mirror on a tree branch, we still list that as an accident. The majority tend to be a bus at a bus stop and somebody rear ends the vehicle. So I think as we presented, previously, we have taken steps to add lighting, to add, reflective tape, in the purchases of the new vehicles to help enhance its visibility. But unfortunately, there are some people that are, out there, maybe distracted driving or whatever the case may be, and have made contact with the vehicle.
Thank you. Director Knight.
Yeah, again, thank all for the presentation, and you pretty much answered what I was gonna ask on the non-preventable, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam
Director
Chair.
Schiffler?
With the two assaults, law enforcement got involved, and the people are being prosecuted.
So, yes, absolutely. In these particular cases, I'll look into it a little bit more. Generally, we call law enforcement, anytime an operator is assaulted. More often than not, the person that does the assaulting takes off. They're aware that they've done something they shouldn't have, and they usually leave. So, the operator will report it as required. We'll send a supervisor, we'll send AGS, our armed security company, and then obviously, law enforcement as needed, depending on, what the situation is. More often than not, customers, when they do something they're not supposed to, they kick in a glass door or something like that, they usually take off because they know if they hang around, they'll be arrested, so.
But it is our policy to fully
Absolutely.
prosecute so that our
Absolutely.
drivers and our employees know that we're behind 110%.
Absolutely. We have a zero tolerance when it comes to these things, and we notify law enforcement as soon as possible and press charges when applicable.
This, along with all the others, very good presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. Okay, we will move on to heavy maintenance facility. Mr. Dan Rodriguez, Project Manager 2, you are recognized to present.
Good morning, Madam Chair, committee members, Mr. Drainville. Dan Rodriguez, Project Manager with the HART PMO. Okay, I'm here this morning to give an update on the heavy maintenance facility. In my update, I'll go over the campus history, the project look back, the current project plan, and the next steps. What we now call the HM facility was actually built in 1979 as a trucking facility. It was then purchased by HART in 1981. It served the needs of the newly formed Transit Authority, but the layout of the facility and the campus were originally built for trucks and not buses. As the system grew and the layout of the facility both internally and on campus became, as the system grew, the layout of the facility both internally and on campus became more and more inefficient. Changes in technology, such as the transition to CNG, brought additional challenges. Though the vehicles saved on operating and capital costs, the maintenance of the vehicles became an increasing problem. The existing HM roof became an issue, with new CNG buses causing inefficiencies where several bays could not accommodate the new bus height. So as the CNG fleet increased, so did this problem. Since the facility was built in the late 70s, the original development was not required to mitigate for stormwater, created from impervious surfaces. Additional developments surrounding the facility, as well as road and interstate improvements, made the ongoing stormwater problem increasingly worse. By 2012, it became apparent that the facility's age and its heavy use was taking a toll. At this time, staff began looking at the possibility of renovating the HM building. Here is the high-level timeline of events since 2012 that looked at ways to fix the HM facility over the years. In 2012, HART applied for grants to help renovate the then 33-year-old facility. Once the funds were released, HART had a consultant review the entire HM building and provide a scope of work, as well as an order of magnitude to renovate the building. In 2017, HART sent out a proposal for the renovation of the HM building. The successful firm provided a $15 million proposal to renovate the building. As part of their proposal was a value engineering report, since it had already been several years since the review of the building had been done. The VE portion of the proposal stated that HART will be making a big investment in a building that's well past its useful life, only to gain a limited number of years for its effort, and that a new facility could be built for $30 to $35 million. In 2018, with the thought of the passage of the referendum, HART proceeded to go forward with a design-build contract for a new facility to include campus-wide improvements, including, most importantly, addressing the stormwater problem. Upon the passage of a referendum in November 2018, it was full steam ahead to complete the design of the new HM facility. At that time, this was to be done within the current fence line and would have to be done all while maintaining service. The referendum was unfortunately challenged in various courts, so while awaiting their decision, staff and design-build consultant continued to lay out campus designs. Unfortunately, due to the numerous changes in the scope and the new size of the project, HART had to cancel the contract with the design-build consultant. The plan was to resolicit with a contract better geared to design and build the entire campus, not just the HM facility. In 2020, HART staff reached out to Hillsborough County School Board to discuss the possibility of obtaining their underutilized facility in order to give HART additional space to build while continuing to operate and service our patrons. In 2021, as we all know, the story of referendum did not end in HART's favor. This crushing blow made staff reconsider new funding opportunities and a new phased approach to getting the overall project done in affordable pieces. In 2023, the HART board awarded a contract to CDM Smith to review our past steps and to lay out a path to the future with updated project costs. In our last board meeting, was asked what attributed to the change in cost. Here's a quick snapshot of what the last 4 years since the pandemic has done to our estimates. As you see, in 2020, 2021, and in 2022, building materials such as steel, concrete, and lumber jumped to unprecedented heights during that time. Now let's compound those material costs with the actual cost of labor. As you can see, that spiked as well during the same time period. CDM Smith, as part of their scope of services, provided staff a phased approach to completing the full campus build-out. This preferred alternative includes obtaining the adjacent school board property shown in the yellow dashed line. CDM Smith and staff took into account not just the immediate needs of today, but for the expanded service in the future, as well as emerging fuel technologies for opportunities to partner with other entities such as TECO and HCC. In order to achieve the full campus layout, it had to be phased into manageable and more affordable phases. This will not only help in funding these phases, but also help HART maintain operations on this property. It may still be necessary to relocate some bus and/or employee parking to accommodate the construction team and their layout areas during these phases. The cost estimates are in today's dollars, and they are escalated to the year of probable construction or installation. Next steps on the Phase 1 of the full campus plan are as follows. 1 is to revisit discussions with the school board on their willingness to allow HART to acquire their property. 2 is to reach out to the partner agencies such as the City of Tampa, FDOT, on how to alleviate the flooding issues on our campus from both the sheet flow from the north as well as the backup of stormwater trying to get to McKay Bay. 3, to begin the design and construction of new service lane facility, which would include both fuel lanes, vehicle, and bus washes. So here's what we have underway. We have initiated talks with the school board and are doing an initial appraisal of their property. We have issued task orders to our engineering consultant to assist with the stormwater assessment, as well as working on the FTA environmental clearance. With help from FDOT, WSP, and HART staff, the raise application was submitted prior to the February 28th due date, and we are hopeful for a favorable outcome sometime in July of this year. As shown on the slide, the ask for the raise grant as well as the match is $29.2 million, which will help us complete the Phase 1 items. For your information, monthly updates on this project will continue to be included in the monthly board packets. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time and attention. I have Ben Harbour from CDM Smith on virtually, and we will be glad to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Chair, I have one. What is the total cost of the project, soup to nuts?
Well, the total problem is how long does it take to do,
Right.
right? So the last number we had, I believe, is 140, 150.
Okay.
So, but again, being the pieces, what can we do this year? What can we do next year? How funding comes along. The longer we wait, the more it tends to stretch out.
Yeah, I'm looking at your phased cost sheet, and the figures seem to total more than 140 or 150 million. Unless I'm mistaken somehow.
Well, I was going by today's dollars. So
Okay.
let me go back to it. But by the time you get to right there. I had it calculated. I didn't have it in front of me. Ben, do you have that number? Let me have Ben, CDM Smith, if he has the number handy.
Yeah. I was just going to clarify what we were talking about, though, because the overall project, if that includes all of the campus, like we're talking about 1 through 5, that would be significantly higher than that. I just want to make sure we're talking about, I think, Dan, you were talking about through the heavy maintenance facility, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure if that was the difference possibly.
Well, the reason I asked the question is because the figures in the phased cost estimate seem to total considerably more than 150. And my question is what's the total cost of the project? If it's 150, why doesn't this total that?
Ben, what do you have as the total, complete all phases number?
For all through 1 through 5, that's what I just want to make sure that's what we're checking. Give me 1 second, I'll pull that up.
Yes.
And I apologize, I don't have, I think, the same exhibit, but I had for all phases, I think it was 237 million.
That would seem to be considerably more than 150. And I actually come up with a figure of 296 million if I add up the figures that are represented here. So how much is this project really going to cost? And how much of this is transferable to the county or the city?
That's a good question.
So I would say though, when you look into the phases, these phases for full campus
I understand, but I mean, if you're talking about the total cost of this project, if you tell me it's $150 million, then these figures need to add up to $150 million.
Correct. And we need
Okay.
we need to focus on, first.
If it's going to be $300 million, it needs to say that.
Agree.
Okay.
I have a question in regards to the timeline on page 44. From 2012 to, what part of this timeline, have we done any of these things? As we were awarded certain aspects of money, were we able to accomplish things as we went forward? And I know I'm asking individuals that probably weren't in place when this happened, when we were awarded these dollars.
Well, we did receive some funding in 2012. By the time the money is released, we had the thought was to renovate it first. That was the idea of the funding. We got the funding to renovate. So as we went through some iterations of having consultants look over the building, see what it would take to renovate, what the cost would be, and then we decided, well, let's go forward and put it out on the street to renovate. That's when, later on in 2017, the consultant came back that was awarded the contract, said, you know what, you're really better off putting, a new building instead of throwing good money over bad, so. In that time, we had stormwater assessments done. We had a lot of things happening during that time. And once we focused on going forward with the renovation, then going with the new building, that's when things started moving along. But there was a time period where it was uncertain whether we would have enough money to do the renovation.
And tell me what you mean by moving along. I think, 'cause
Well, you can see there's, from 2012 to 2017, there's like a period that's kind of what was going on. And, we were applying for some funding, there was some matching dollars and things that took some time to get. And once they were comfortable on which way to go, that's when it really started moving forward. So from 2017 on, it was just a constant something happening.
So tomorrow, so today, what are we doing based on the timeline?
Well, today, what we're doing is, if you look in the campus layout, where you see all the buildings laid out, there's one in particular, the fuel service lane, the fuel service building, number 1, in the center of the diagram. That doesn't change in any of the iterations of all the drawings. The fuel service lane pretty much stays in the same spot. So we're going ahead with the design of that. We have put a task order out to the design team to go ahead and start designing that. So that's the first process, is to start that. In the meantime, we're waiting on additional funding, hopefully from the RAISE grant, to help facilitate the construction of that fuel service lane.
Okay. Just a moment. So it feels like it's taking us a long time to take any steps, because we're designing and redesigning is my understanding, based on I would say what's taking place. And I'm just going to say it from my perspective. Do we have a design that we've landed on, or are we still designing?
We have a layout that we've agreed upon. It's the preferred alternative. It has not been designed yet, no. There's not enough funding to do that at this time.
So do we have an option to partner with someone who probably already has what we need in place? Have we pursued that option? I'm just throwing something out based on the time that it's going to take us to get to where we need to be in order for us to fast forward our initiatives? And if you don't have to answer that at this point, but there are other entities that I see, buses and trucks and so forth out on the road, and I don't know, you guys have the expertise in this, and is there an option for us to partner with other entities that may have the same needs that we have? And I'm not sure if that's even feasible, but someone has to have these needs and continue to improve upon those needs and in order for their business to run. And is there an option for us in the meantime while we pull our plans together? And I'll just leave that with you, Mr. Dreamville. I just don't know the answer to that.
I'm unclear on what you mean by partnership, but we're very specific to our CNG facility. And some of the funding we've collected, it can only be spent on specific things. Like when Dan speaks about the original idea was to retrofit, and then it came into play that we need to be compliant. So there was ADA compliance, the wind speed, the wind load. So there's so many different factors that affect that. It wasn't worth sinking the money into the retrofit. So now we're looking at future needs and what that campus can hold. So some of the original monies that we could spend could be on land acquisition. So I've already started the talks with the school board on acquiring that property all the way to 40th Street, would give us another 7 acres, which would be prime, would be about 27 acres in total, is what we want to utilize that funds if we need to, if we can't work something out with the school board, and take those steps. But our biggest concern is the HM building itself. So once we know where we're going to stand on the whole layout, then we'll figure out exactly what we need, or where we're going to place the building, whether it's going to be, because we have a plan right now. If we don't get the property, we're still going to build that building on the west side of the lot. And we'll do this in phases as the funding's allotted, so. As far as partnerships with, I'm not really clear on what you mean by the partnership.
We need more buses on the road, and they need to be able to, they need to be safe and mechanically able to be fixed and returned back within, a pretty fast period of time, and meet the needs of our customers quickly. So it's not just the building itself. How do we get a quick turnaround on faster getting our buses back out and even buying more, purchasing more in the meantime while we're getting our land, getting our equipment, and getting all of our the best-in-class HM facility there is.
So I think, to your point, I think as of right now, so we're at 100 bus peak pullout. We can support probably another 100 buses if necessary, right now in our facility with the improvements we're making now. We did put the third compressor in, which gives us more impact to fuel buses quicker. So I'm comfortable right now with some growth we could sustain. But I'm thinking if we could really figure out where that funding was going to come from and the year timeline we would need, we could probably figure that out. Because as the county grows, we're looking at, part of the plan is to look at satellite facilities, like a smaller piece in South County to work out operations. And this is in the long term. But for the short term, I think we can support. We were at, when I first came here, we were at about 190 buses. So we can support that if we need to.
Okay, and this will be my last comment. So we can support faster service, faster bus service now?
No, so we're talking about capital, not in operating. So
Okay.
if we were going to
But we
buy,
had,
so it's two different things. So it's capital on the facilities and in the assets. But if we were going to put it in service, that's what we were talking about when it comes to operating. We'd have to figure out where the operating funds were going to come to get us back to that pre-COVID and pre-Mission Max service. And that costs not only assets, but operators too.
Yeah, to that point, thank you, Madam Chair. To that point, we'd need about, what, another 20 buses?
To get to
To get
pre-COVID.
pre-COVID was 20
we were
buses,
about-
and then all the ancillary operating expenses that go along with that. To go back to a point that you were talking about, Mr. King, the heavy maintenance facility is strictly Phase 1 and Phase 2, not the other three. This is a full campus proposal, and we have not been addressing that, to my knowledge. The 140 million that they're talking about is Phase 1 and Phase 2. Everything else is ancillary additions, wish list, and it's down the road. So to the point of the amount that's being discussed, the 140 is not fully accounted for, but I mean, as close as we can in Phase 1 and 2. We have not had any discussions on 3, 4, or 5 at this point that I'm aware of. So, I mean, in fairness to the planning, they are accounting for it correctly at this point. This is a full campus phase, which is the first time I think we've really seen that. But that's, we're talking 10 years down the road on this almost, for some of this stuff.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of additional comments, if that's all right.
Yes.
One, I would like to apologize for being rude to the staff. I don't mean to be. I was perhaps a little too blunt, and for that I do apologize. My impression is that the initial cost of this project in the beginning was 35 million, and before today, everything I've heard has suggested that we were anticipating doing the entire project for $150 million, which is a considerable sum. If we're talking about $300 million soup to nuts, all-inclusive, then I would hope that the representations would be more along those lines. It's hard for us to say that, okay, we're going to spend $150 million, and then it turns out to be a defense contract where you're paying for $300 million. I mean, I know these things escalate, and I know that with inflation and everything else that we're dealing with, it probably will not be deliverable at $150 million, but I would think that the representations would be more along the lines of what the total project is going to cost, so that we can make a fair determination as to what we're trying to do.
If I may respond.
Yes.
Yep. I understand what you're saying, okay? But up until now, we've only ever talked about the heavy maintenance facility.
Right.
Okay? And the heavy maintenance facility is still coming in at a buck and a half, or 140 or 150 million, okay?
Okay.
Everything else here is, there's a lot of things that have to fall into place for anything to happen. And in the 6 years that I've been sitting here, this has never been discussed. And I'm comfortable with where they stand at this point on this. This is, in a perfect world, and we had all the funding we needed, and we were back to pre-mission max, then this type of stuff would be available. Do administration, building, staff park. That's not required to supply to fulfill our mission statement. Heavy maintenance facility and the stormwater remediation, Phase 1 and Phase 2 is critical to us maintaining our mission. 3, 4, and 5, not so much. But so to that, I'm just so we can, everybody's on the same page, and and if I'm wrong, please staff correct me, but I think that's.
No, you're right on.
That's an important distinction that we need to make. We need the heavy maintenance facility. It's
Yes, sir.
critical. The others, in a perfect world, it'd be great, but it's and I don't think any of that is even on the feasibility polygon at this point. So that's my only point with that.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just one other thing. I agree that for all the future plans we have in mind, the heavy maintenance facility is key. If we don't put that essential piece in place, the rest of it's just a dream. So I'm on board and if we're talking about the $150 million for that, then I'm sorry for having misunderstood and jumped the gun on it. And I do apologize for that. So I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other comments or presentation from the council at this point? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you so much for your presentation. Obviously, it is top of mind for everyone, so to talk about the heavy maintenance facility building, so thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, old business. New business? Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.